The Hungarian Grand Prix is one of my favourite races. I absolutely love the place. Budapest is an incredible city, so you can always have great fun in the evenings as well. And I know that most of the teams feel exactly the same way. It's a great racetrack, throws up a number of different challenges and a number of different opportunities for teams outside of the normal top two, I guess. The temperature is always sky high. So it's a great place to go and finish the first half of the season, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's a race that can bring a little bit of false hope to some of the teams a little bit further down the order who may have struggled at the big power circuits over the first half of the season, because the Hungaroring is not a power dominated circuit, and so it does give a little bit of opportunity for the teams that are lacking slightly in that area. And that means you can finish the first half of the season on a better note, with better performance around a racetrack from your car than you perhaps otherwise would have done, and go into this summer break thinking you might be in a stronger position than you are. The reality is that when we come back after the summer break, it's Spa and Monza, and you are then very much back into the power dominated part of the calendar. The track only really has one long straight. It's a reasonably long straight, so that area does give advantage to the guys who can blast their way down it with the greatest power levels. But that's only a tiny part of this track, because the rest of it comes thick and fast. Although it's not a long lap, it's an incredibly busy lap, full of corners that link from one into another. And it's the cars that have the quickest and most nimble change of direction, the best sort of high-speed balance that will really dominate around this track. Overtaking is not easy around here, but into turn one at the end of that one and only straight is perhaps the biggest and best opportunity. Although we have seen cars making lunges down the inside into some of the other turns as well. Because one corner leads straight into another in so many parts of this, if you get one corner wrong, you can really compromise the next two or even three corners that follow it in quick succession. So car positioning is vital, and to be able to position your car in the correct way at the speed you need to be going at, you need to have a really well balanced car. When we talk about balance on a Formula 1 car, particularly high speed balance, which is what we need around the Hungaroring, we're talking about the way that the car behaves at speed under the extreme limits of cornering. So when you're going through a high speed change of direction, does the front end of the car give up grip before the rear end, for example, and the front start to slide into an understeer characteristic, whereas the front end doesn't turn where the driver wants it to and it slides across the racetrack? Or does it go at the rear end of the car? Does the rear end give up first and it spin into an oversteer situation where the back end swings around a bit more like a pendulum and loses grip? And at that point you've got to massively overcorrect on the steering to bring it back. What you want in an ideal world, and this is a rare occurrence of course, ideal worlds don't really exist in very many situations, but you want a perfectly balanced car at high speed, where ideally when you push the car to its absolute limits of traction through a corner, all four wheels would give up their grip level when they finally reach the limit at the same time, and you end up with a sort of four-wheel drift around the corner. That way the car stays balanced, you know where your limits are, and you can manage to change direction incredibly quickly. And as a driver, have confidence that when you have to try and do that, when you have to change direction quickly, when you have to set yourself up for the next sequence of corners, you've got the confidence in your car that a very quick change of direction on the steering wheel at speed is going to deliver exactly what you expect it to, with the car keeping grip on the racetrack. That's what you need around the Hungaroring. This is a high downforce circuit because it's a bit like Monaco. It's a little bit like Singapore, just without the walls. This is a track that has runoff, but still has lots of those very, very tight and twisty sections in it. So maximum downforce for everybody, huge big rear wings on the car. Updates, teams will be bringing updates to suit that high downforce configuration as well. Braking is around, I guess, medium. Not too strenuous, but there are a couple of big braking events. Turn one, of course, is a big stop, but nothing that's going to stress the cars out too much. I guess the biggest issue in terms of braking, and it's not really a massive issue, but it's temperature, because the ambient temperatures can be so high that brake duct selection or brake duct configuration has to be well chosen by the teams to make sure that the brakes don't start overheating over a course of a difficult race. Temperature actually is one of the bigger issues at this place, because I've been to this track where the ambient has been well up into the 40s, and that is hot. That's hot for a driver. It was hot for us mechanics, well, particularly when you're wearing the full Nomex fire suits and underwear back in the day for refueling and pit stops. And it's of course the same for drivers. They're wearing all of that stuff. They're strapped into the confines of a very tight racing car. And yes, they may have the wind rushing by them at some points in the track, but it's a circuit that doesn't give any break to the drivers other than that little straight, that main straight. The rest of the lap is relentless all the way around it. And it's 70 laps of that over and over again. So from a driver's perspective, it's incredibly hot, incredibly difficult and challenging physical race. Got to keep hydrated. The drinks bottle in the car has to be working at all times, and the drivers have to be reminded to use it throughout the race, because it's very, very easy for them to get into that zone of driving the car and focusing on what they're doing and completely forget to rehydrate. So the engineers will often, you'll hear them come on the radio reminding the driver to take a drink, and it's incredibly important they do so. Same for the mechanics and pit stop crew in the garage. Got to stay well hydrated, because the last thing you need is somebody falling over sick at a critical moment in the race, and it has happened. The teams have to modify their bodywork. They have to open up the air cooling, the cooling vents on the car. Things like the top of the shark's fin, or the top body of the car, sometimes needs to be opened up. The air intakes around the brakes, around the radiators, the side pods, all need to be at their maximum to allow as much airflow both in and out of those sections, just to keep the temperatures under control of the power unit, the brakes, gearbox, everything like that, electronics as well. So you'll often find, if teams come to a Friday where temperatures are getting a bit too high, you'll find them cutting holes in bodywork in a fairly crude manner, but sometimes that's the only way to get enough airflow through these critical systems to keep them all operating. And when it really comes to the end of the day, it's far more important that they're operating than the car and these openings look nice and professional. So occasionally, just occasionally, you'll see somebody get in there with a big pair of snips or a big disc cutter and start hacking holes in the bodywork. Another thing that temperature can definitely cause issues for, of course, is tyres. Now Pirelli have brought here the same selection that we had at the last round in Hockenheim. So again, we've skipped that super soft tyre, and we've got medium, soft and ultra soft. The big difference here is it's a different type of circuit, and we expect temperatures to be incredibly high. This is a racetrack that was relayed, so the surface was relayed last year. So as I've talked about before, the tarmac is very dark, almost black, absorbs heat from the sunlight, much more so than an old sort of lighter colour grey racetrack. And that does have an impact, particularly somewhere like Budapest, where the temperatures can be so high. Ambient temperatures well into the 40s can mean a track temperature well into the 50s, and that is incredible. It can have a big effect on the way the car performs, on the way the tyres perform. And one of the challenges, of course, for the teams and drivers at that point is to think about thermal degradation, overheating the tyres, particularly around the end of the lap. In qualifying, where qualifying is so crucial around here because it's difficult to overtake, everything is going to be focused on that final lap in Q3 for the front runners, which will be on the ultra soft tyre. Managing to keep that tyre alive over the course of the entire lap might be one of the biggest challenges, not overheating it. There is no long straight in the second half of that lap to start cooling tyres down. So the tyres, just like the drivers and the rest of the car, are being put through its paces constantly from corner to corner to corner. And if you start to overheat the surface of that ultra soft tyre in the qualifying lap, you will start to rapidly run out performance before the end of the lap comes, and that will be the challenge, balancing off how much performance you put through that tyre in the early part of the lap and how much you kind of hold back and save for the end. The racetrack's quite smooth, so normal wear rates are pretty low, so it will all come down to the thermal management of the surface of the rubber. My guess is that it will suit the cars with the most downforce, and that for me will probably be the Ferraris. Obviously it's going to be close at the top, as it always is, but what should be great here, and I expect to happen, is that for the first time in a few races we will have a genuine third contender in the form of Red Bull around here. This is a big opportunity for those guys. They have a very, very high downforce producing chassis, and at this particular circuit where the power unit is less dominant and mechanical and aerodynamic grip is stronger in terms of a differentiator, they have a real opportunity because their car ticks those boxes. Tantalisingly close, of course, to the summer break, the August break that everybody looks forward to so much. Unbelievably though, it's not quite over at the end of this race on Sunday evening, because there is a test. Tuesday and Wednesday of next week is a mid-season test. There's also a Pirelli test going on. So it'll be just a few more days before the drivers, the teams, the mechanics, the engineers, everybody in Formula One can finally do this!